All right, so we've got to work on turning on our machine, making sure that we have everything set up before we make a run. So I'm going to show you that today. So we have our power. We just got nice and easy, turn on the power. It's going to come on in just a second. As it does, it's going to ask us basically for an origin set, and it's just going to move its stuff around. All we have to do is hit this E button right here, which is enter. It's going to move around. You can see it's repositioning itself. It'll put it right back to where it was, but it does this every time you start it up. And see, if I was still doing this logo, which is one that we were doing before, we could hit yes and it would continue it. For this illustration, we're going to say no. So this takes it back out there. And then I want to show you some of the navigation things. So if we were going to load a logo on, we would hit this button right here. It's got these three, it looks like a stack of logos. And then we would come hit next right here, because we want to get to this right here, which is our memory card symbol. And then once we hit this, it's going to load our card. Some cards take a little longer to load than others. We're going to have to wait a second for this one to load. Now we have access to all of our files, so we just have to scroll through here and find the one that we need. Just for this illustration, I'll just pick a random one. So now that I've got it, I've just got to use these. I use these arrows as navigation. If I need to back out of this and go back to the folders menu, I have to hit this middle button and it'll go back to my folders. But if I want to go back in, I hit the same button. When I'm picking a logo, then I'm not using this as enter. I'm actually hitting this right here, which shows our card directing toward the M for machine. So we hit that, we hit our enter button, and now our logo will load onto the machine and off of our card. This way, when we take our card out, we can move our card to another machine, or we can use our card to set up another logo. And this logo is already on the machine now. And it has a little memory bank here. If we come here, we hit this menu button again, you can actually scroll through, and there's some that we save on here all the time. And there's 30 slots on here. So the ones that we don't use often, we'll delete. The ones we use all the time, we'll actually leave on here. But that's how you get to that. Next, we're going to do our color changes input. So what we do is we take our sew out, and it's got our color changes. So here we're going to use our same menu button. And then we need to get to our function list, which is B. It's this boat with the question mark. You hit the function list, which is where our color changes will be, and it brings up this list. Now there are some that you see, it starts at 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, but some of our logos start with 0, 0. In order to start on the first stitch, because you see this one starts at 1040, is we scroll up to start and we hold down this middle button until it becomes 0, 0. So what we do is we'll put in our colors. So we have corn silk for the first two, those are number 3. Green is on 8, light blue is on 11, corn silk is on 3, dark green is 8, corn silk is 3, and 3 again, and then our final one is white, which is 15. And if you notice here, you can either go up, you hit these A's and B's to change your numbers. You can either go up to a number, to 15, or since I was already down here at 2, I can also go backwards to 15 as well. And there's only 15 because each head has 15 needles. And then I hit this button again. What this does is it saves it. So it saves exactly what we wanted to do. And the next thing we would do is we would check on our orientation. Typically this is a hat logo. So this shows our orientation. This shows that it's going to be top down. But for a hat, what we have to do is we typically have a different hoop. We've got to hit this button here, and then this is our orientation button. So this button allows you to come down here to this RT pattern and change which way depending on how you've hooped the shirt or jacket or whatever it is. In this situation though, since we're putting it on a hat, we actually can scroll up or down, because we'll go back to the beginning and go to 13, and we have a cap frame. So we'd hit the plus and again hit the menu button, and it saves it into place. Here we're going to show when we do to change our speed, to make sure that we have the speed that we want. So when we have a hat hoop, if we push this while it's with a hat, styled for a hat, we hit this and it's going to pull up, and we can adjust our speeds. This caps out at 800 on a hat hoop. We can either go down 10 at a time, or up 10 at a time, or we can go down 50. If we were not on a hat hoop, we'd have to be able to go up higher. We typically run things at 850. And that's where we would sit. So when this hat hoop has been finished and I go switch to a logo that's not a hat, I'd have to adjust the speed up to the appropriate number because it would still be at 800 on the new one. Now that we have our orientation set, what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's not hitting our hoop, or if we were on a cap, we don't want to hit our cap hoop. So what we'll do is we have got to put it in drive, which is this blinking button here. It shows that this is the needle coming up and down. So as I do this, as you see, it's going to change the green. That way we know it's in drive. Before this, we could hit start and it would not come down. It wouldn't, your fingers would not be any danger, so you can work on the machine without it. At this point though, you hit start, the needle will actually begin to move. So we have that. And then what we need to do is we need to check to make sure our heads are on or off depending on how many things we're running. So in this situation, we're only running one. So I've got these little buttons here. Up obviously means on, down is off. So on this first one, we see that it's on. I'm only running one, so I want to come over here and make sure this is off. Make sure this one, see this one was on, we want to turn this off. Same thing here, we want to turn this one off. That way our needles aren't coming down and creating any problems. The last thing we want to do to make sure it doesn't hit this hoop, as we said, is when we have it in drive, we have this option here, which is our trace out button. Looks like the little star, and you can see it tracing around the star. What we'll do is we'll hit it, and then we're going to watch our dot, red dot, to make sure it's not coming over our hoop. So we're going to hit that here. So we see right now we've got plenty of space. We're not anywhere near our hoop, because it could cause problems with the machine if the needle comes down on the hoop. So by doing this, we know that we're completely safe. Part of our machine navigation abilities that we have is if a logo messes up, we have the ability to back up. So one thing that we can do is if the bobbin runs out or we've had a problem with the sewing, what we can do is we can actually back this up to get to where we need to be. We can do that by hitting this button here. And what we do is when we back this up, it'll go back however long we need it to be. And then what you can do is hit start, and it's going to run that logo back to where you just backed it up from. So if you're running multiple shirts, only this one that you've backed up will run that section, so it won't add extra thread to these, but it'll get it caught up to the rest of them. So that way you've hit start, it'll run that part, and then it's going to stop. And at that point you'll know that all four at that point, or all three, or however many you have, are all at the exact same position, and we can hit start again. I'm going to show you a button now that is a non-essential button when it comes to running our logos, but it is useful for when you're time management and planning out your runs. So what we can do is, while we have it in drive, if we hit this page button, we can hit it 2 different times, and then the third time it'll take us back to our main screen. But if you notice on the first screen, it actually gives us a run time. So this estimates that it'll run at the speed that it's going, which is 800 stitches, because we're on a hat hoop, for 6 minutes. So if I didn't know how long things took, I can use this to estimate, okay, if I'm going to run one at a time, I've got 20 hats, I need 20 times 6, and that'll give me how long everything will take, as long as I keep it running over time. If I hit the button again too, and this pops up when we do our trace out for just a little moment while it traces it out, but you can actually use this to tell where your center is, so that way when you set up your dot based on your center, you know that it's where you want it to be. And it's a good thing to know, because sometimes when logos come back, they're not, the digitizers forget to recenter this. Now this one was purposely centered on the bottom because it's a hat, so we want to make sure it doesn't hit the hoop. But again, this just shows you where that center could possibly be. And that's the page button. So there are 2 ways that we can trim whenever we need to trim a stitch on our logo. The first is this obvious scissors right here. All we have to do is hit this. And then we just have to come over here and hit start. And it's going to trim our logo for us. One way is to do this. You turn this off and on quickly, and within 10 seconds hit start. Another thing that we can do is if we have a problem with the machine and we need to go back just a little bit, or maybe our width or our height has gotten off, what we can do is there's a button here. And this is the one with the stitch and all these little stitches. We can hit this, and what this does is this takes this, it's not really in drive, but we don't want to take it out of drive for a reason that we'll explain later. But when it's in this way, what we can now do is we can move this logo to see that if it's running correctly. So I can move it ahead 2,000 stitches. And what it does is it actually moves the logo when it moves. Here, I'll show you again. We back up those same 2,000, it's going to move. So it's going to put it to where it should be at this point in the logo. So if you were fixing a problem that you had, you can make sure that what you're about to stitch stops where it should be. Because in a situation where I had a problem, what I would do is I would write down these numbers in a location so I know to come back here to start. That way I can do whatever I need to do maneuvering, and it can do anything it needs to do, but when it's time to restart, I can go back to that same point and make sure that my laser light still lines up with the logo that we're doing. Also, sometimes what you have to do is when a logo has done, maybe you've made a problem, maybe you started with the wrong color on a sew out and you have a problem that you need to fix. What you can do, instead of having to back it up 2,000 stitches to start over with a clean new thing, you can come to this same spot and you can actually hold this 1,000 down. You can go up or down 1,000 at that point, or you can go one at a time a bit more slowly. But if I hold this down and go to the very end and hit enter, what it'll do is it'll take it back to the very start of the run, take it out of that and put it back in drive. So at this point, if this was something that I had to have fixed, I can now fix all my color changes and then put it in there and let it run the right way. I think that. After a logo completes, it'll come back to your 0. What we can do is, now that we're done with this logo, we want to take it back out of drive. That way we can pick a new logo. In order to do that, we have to hold this button down until it comes out of drive. Now we see that it's safe to move. We could take our items off at this point. And then since we're done with this logo, we can come back to our menu and we can actually remove this from our machine entirely. So in order to do that, we have to hit next, and there's a delete off the machine button. We hit this A here, we confirm yes, and now it's gone and it frees up space for us to put another logo.